Joining us online is a man who is no stranger to the Observer. Let me say a pleasant good evening to Barataria San-Juan MP and UNC Shadow Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Saddam Hosein. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Hi, good evening, Mikey. How are you doing?
All right.
Good evening to all of the listeners.
Thank you so much, and all the viewers that are locked on. You had quite a press conference earlier today, and some of the things that were outlined, connecting the dots, especially this whole issue with the Auditor General, this impasse. You made it quite clear that as a sovereign democratic state with several independent institutions, such as the Judiciary, the Salary Review Commission, and the Office of the Auditor General, to name a few, you said under section 116, there's a clear stipulation that the Constitution protects the institution of the Office of the Auditor General. Please expand on that.
Right. So when the framers of our Constitution in 1976 decided to move away from our independent 1962 Constitution into the 76 Constitution, they realized that we have to insulate some offices from the executive, which is the government, from political pressure, because governments act on political expediency and will in order to make themselves look good. So that is why you have these independent checks and balances through these independent institutions built within our Constitution, and they have been given the protection. In fact, Section 116 is an entrenched provision in the Constitution. You need a very special majority, majority greater than a 3/5, in order to amend that particular provision. And what it says is that the Auditor General should be under no direction of any person, authority, or institution, which means that she acts independently on her own, and she's guided by what created her office, which is the Constitution. And she has one major rule, which is really to audit the books of the government, because every year the Parliament appropriates billions of dollars for the government to spend. The government, at the end of the day, has to manage the country in terms of resources, in terms of the ministries, whatsoever. So they have to be given the money to do so. But when the government spends the public's money, there must be accountability for the money. And the Auditor General has the power to call for any records, any books, any documents from any ministry in order to determine whether the money that was allocated to them was spent properly. And if you go through the Auditor General's reports over the years, you would realize that there are instances where the Auditor General will point out where monies have been spent, but they didn't see where the money was spent. There were no documents, there nothing to support the expenditure of that money. So it's an independent check and balance on the entire government and their expenditure. So that is why her office must always be protected.
Then why would anyone believe that they can circumvent that and simply say, listen, I'm going to, you've submitted something, or I have submitted something, and I simply just want you to abide by it and give a rubber stamp without any accountability or anything as far as asking questions. Why would that be taking place?
Right. So let's start from the beginning, and I'll tell you why it's taking place, because we're going into an election here. The government wants to look good. Minister Imbert always boasts about his fiscal management of the economy. And when you look at what really is taking place, the government, at the end of the day, through the Treasury, is saying, look, we have $3 billion additional revenue that we collected in 2023. When the Auditor General looked at the books, she said, but I can't find the $3 billion. So what they're trying to do is try to close the gap of the deficit, to say that there was a small deficit in 2023 to show their financial prudence and fiscal management and whatsoever. But the Auditor General is clearly saying, well, listen, I can't find the $3 billion in the additional revenue. Now, she has, based on the public records that are out there are 3 accounts that were submitted to her. Now, the government had to submit the public accounts to the Auditor General in order for her to audit it. We agree on that.
Right.
The deadline, according to the law, is the 31st of January 2024. It's 4 months from the end of the financial year. Financial year ends 30 September. So therefore, it will take us to the end of January for the deadline for the submission of the public account. The government submitted public accounts to the Auditor General on the 31st of January in compliance with the law. but they disclosed and declared a revenue of $61 billion. Then 2 months later, the PS and the Ministry of Finance pick up the phone and call the Auditor General and say, listen, we made an error in the accounts that we submitted to you. It's really $64 billion in revenue. Now, Mikey, if you miss $300 these days, you would identify that very easily.
Of course.
They have missed $3 billion, I'm telling you, not $3 million, but $3 billion that they are saying that they made an error on. That is one of the gravest errors that I think we have seen in the financial history of our country. So fast forward then, they now decided, well, according to what the Auditor General is saying, they submitted another account to her after the 31st of January 2024, which was the legal deadline, and tells her, listen, I want you to consider this new account that says $64 billion. But what was strange is that what the Auditor General is saying is that that document was backdated. Although it was submitted after the 31st of January 2024, the document itself was dated the 31st of January 2024. Now, how could you backdate a document and say, well, this is a proper document? You would understand, even in the layman's term, that is tantamount to fraud. Because if you're saying that at this particular date, these are the accounts, and then you backdate it, that is a fraudulent issue, and then we have to get into the legality of all of those things.
Exactly. So let's understand, because the good folks who are locked on and viewing, again, they want to be able to grasp exactly what is taking place here, because many may not be legally inclined to understand. So we're breaking it down here. So although it was late, one should, of course, understand and take note that the figure to be added, there was no supporting evidence, no supporting documents, nothing to say, well, all right, listen, we made an error. This is where the error took place. I mean, only now we're hearing after the fact that central bank made some erroneous deposit, as the case may be. But there was no supporting document. And on top of that, failure to include these new figures, according to what you said earlier today, were received by way of legal threats. And advice was later sought through the Office of the Attorney General, who advised to seek legal counsel as they were representing the Ministry of Finance, and this would have been a conflict of interest. Now, I'm sure going through the minds of many people, here it is, you have an Auditor General who is saying, I'm not going to rubber stamp anything. Do we also have to look at what may have occurred in the past when things may have simply been, came across the desk and it was approved and a signature affixed to it saying it's all good and well?
Well, that's quite a mouthful there, Mikey. And if I don't know if I have the time, but if you would allow me to just distill and examine and take apart everything you said there systematically so people will understand the magnitude of this issue. The first point is this. They are submitting accounts past the legal deadline. That is in fact illegal. Let's start there. Because if the law says you have to submit it by the 31st of January, and you submit it hereafter, that you only agree.
You're breaking up a bit. I don't know if you're moving, as the case may be.
Hello?
Yeah, go right ahead. We're hearing you louder. Go ahead.
Right. Let's start from the beginning. If the legal deadline is the 31st of January, and you submit anything thereafter, then that is illegal, because the law says the 31st of January. Anything after that, the Auditor General ought not to consider. She then gets a new account with new revenue figures reflecting $3 additional billion. And that account was received after the 31st of January. But it says it is dated the 31st of January. Now, how could the Auditor General say, well, I can accept this account because it has basically a back date on it? Then that apparently was withdrawn, and then she gets a third account, which is now dated the 16th of April 2024. Again reflecting an increased revenue figure of $64 billion. When she received that, she said, no, I can't consider this because I do not have the authority to do so. The Parliament never granted the extension for me to consider these new accounts. Then that is where the threats and the bullying took place. Legal threats were sent to her through the Office of the Attorney General, indicating to her that she has to accept the accounts. Now, she was coerced and forced to accept the accounts, and she had to audit the new figure.
Right.
When she audited those new figures that the government wanted her to audit, she could not find the $3 billion that they're telling her that existed. And then on top of that, she has indicated to us through the Parliament and her legal letters throughout which is circulating right now in the public space, is that the report is completed. We have information that the report auditing the extra $3 billion that she can't find was on Parliament the last when the Parliament met. And Imbert refused to lay the report to make it public. So if the report is completed, if the Auditor General received the new accounts, and the report was sent to the Parliament and sent to the Minister, why did the government come for an extension? The report is completed.
Exactly.
Make it public. That's the bottom line. Just make the thing public. So what the extension, what we did in Parliament is this. The government says that it was an extension to submit the accounts to the end of April. But the accounts are submitted, and they wanted to now extend the reporting date to the end of August. Now, August is when Parliament breaks. So if Parliament breaks at that time, we would never see the light of that report until after the budget, which is sometime in October. So I don't understand how come a complete report cannot be laid, but now they're asking for an extension. It's very perplexing and confusing.
And that definitely raises a red flag, because people are under the impression that, listen, this report is finished, it's there, and simply just lay the report, submit the report. Now, as far as repercussions
so
in
we're
all...
not under the impression enough. We have confirmed that the report is completed. We have confirmed that the report was submitted to the Parliament and the Speaker. We could also confirm that Minister Imbert failed to make the report public. That is what we could confirm. So we can't be under the impression those are confirmed facts before us.
Now, let me ask you as far as repercussions, because there are so many global credit agencies that have to look at the way government handles business. If we're talking about local investors, foreign investors, private sector, I mean, something is going to have to raise a red flag of concern as far as the government's financial management. Are we going to get a backlash where this is concerned?
Be surprised by
You're breaking up again.
Not a field of expertise in terms of finance, but let's look at it reasonably. A lending institution and a government is saying, look, we have $3 billion in revenue extra, and we have no documents, no accounts to suggest or prove that. Would you feel confident in lending that country money?
Of course not.
So it damages the financial credibility of the country, not the government, of the country.
So that definitely will affect.
When we get into government, it's something that we will have to deal with very seriously in terms of reestablishing and generating credibility again with our lending institutions, our credit rating agencies, because this again is an era of epic proportions.
And this will somehow affect our credit rating.
I have no doubt it will. Because your revenue and your declared revenue determines how healthy your economy can be, because that determines how we're going to provide for goods and services and service debt.
Now the Auditor General seems to be public enemy number one. I mean, if we stick to the core issue here of the fact that there's no supporting documents and what one is asking her to do is simply wrong, then on top of that, we're seeing a political twist. And then there's also some racial undertone. We have found ourselves in a situation where we believe that this entire thing could have been dealt with if it is that the government was truthful to begin with when submitting these reports. Am I right or wrong?
Definitely. And what this government is accustomed doing is bullying their way through everything. When they can't get their way, they destroy. They couldn't get their way through a commissioner of police. They collapsed the Police Service Commission. The Integrity Commission decided to investigate the Prime Minister. It had an impasse with the Integrity Commission. The DPP wasn't using the government, singing from the hymn book of the government. They attacked the DPP. You would remember in the past, the PNM government put a Speaker of the House under house arrest. You remember when they hounded out Chief Justice Sharma out of office, when they tried to hound out DPP Henderson out of office. And this is a systematic behavior and conduct of any PNM government. And we have seen it especially with this carnation of the PNM. When they simply cannot get their way, they bulldoze and bully through all of the issues. I am so happy that Ms. Jaiwanti Ramdas stood her ground against the government and said, listen, I am bound by the Constitution and the law. And she put a full stop to the matter. She went and get a lawyer. The AG said, listen, I can't represent you. Go get your lawyer. Now he is going for he is a senior counsel, going for senior counsel advice to determine if he could pay the Auditor General senior counsel.
Yeah, and there are so many aspects of this thing that does not add up. I mean, when you have the finance minister saying that the problem here is some electronic checking system. Now, this is a lot of money to fall through the cracks when you're talking about a system. Why wasn't the system that he's talking about didn't run with the old system parallel to ensure that this kind of mistake never happened to begin with?
Mikey, I don't even want to entertain that argument of Mr. Everett, because you can't tell me that $3 billion is missing because of a new check imaging system. That should have increased efficiency into the entire system if you're going to digitize and introduce computers and electronic systems. So I'm not buying that story of Minister Everett. What the government is trying to do is make themselves look good by closing the gap of the deficit. But there are other revealing matters in the report that Dr. Mulilal spoke about today, where we have seen members of parliament in the receipt of rents for $3 billion amounting to $752,000. We have seen drones that they buy for the valuation division, property tax. Maybe they want to come with drones to view your house now. They bought one missing. The Ministry of Trade went to buy some laser analyzer machine from a company in Indonesia for $27,000 US. The Auditor General indicated, well, look, I can't find the company, I can't find the website, and the machine not in Trinidad. And these are things that we think that they want to sweep under the carpet.
Yeah, and compounded with the fact that we have been seeing this sort of action taking place where many of these independent offices are being compromised. What's important, and I think you laid that out today, is that in the exercise of her functions under this Constitution, the Auditor General shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority. And why is it that the government believes that they have the authority to go and circumvent and to somehow get involved in things that are clearly laid out that they should not be dealing with?
Correct. Is the government, we have a list, Mikey, and you know it probably very well, of the amount of times we took the government to court because they have broken the law. And they will continue to break the law with contempt and disregard. But in this instance, we're calling on the government to pay the senior counsel for the Auditor General so that she can have proper legal representation. So if this matter reaches the court, we will have a full ventilation of the issues before us, because this is going to be a constitutional impasse with respect to the auditing of the public accounts of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mr. Hosein, I want to make sure that point that you just raised is, so go get an attorney. You go and retain this attorney, which of course is Mr. Anand Ramlogan. I believe that the Auditor General feels as though she has been defamed or tarnished in some form or fashion. Now there seems to be a problem for the government to pay for that very said attorney that she was told to go and retain.
Exactly. It's very duplicitous on the part of the government. You can't tell the Auditor General, go get lawyers. And when she gets the lawyers, they say, well, we had to get advice whether we could pay the lawyer. While they have in their arsenal the Attorney General, who is over 40 years old, Douglas Mendez, Senior Counsel, who is about 30 years experience. They have Simon De Lavesky, I think he's over 30 years experience also. And one other junior lawyer, Kendra Mark Gordon, who I think she was called someone in 2009. And the Auditor General cannot have a similar battery of lawyers. There should be equality of arms of the state.
Yeah. What's your next move? I mean, where do we go from here? Because listen, this is a lot of money, and I want you to understand, I'm sure you understand, of course, your constituents come to you, they talk about the fact that there's no employment, no opportunities, poor infrastructure, poor health care, and here it is, there's over $3 billion that cannot be accounted for, and someone is being bullied to say, listen, it's all good and well, and I'm going to sign off on it. What next?
Well, as you rightly pointed out, the Constitution says that the Auditor General is an independent office. The ball is in the court of the Auditor General. We cannot tell the Auditor General what to do as the opposition, and neither can the government. So the ball is in her court, and she has the courtroom to vindicate herself with respect to this entire matter.
Yeah, and we definitely can't hold our breath and expect the government to do the right thing. I mean, there's a proven track record that shows that when it comes to doing that, they do everything contrary as far as what's laid out, even in the Constitution. So we find ourselves in a very strange situation.
I can't go so far to say that's wishful thinking.
Yeah, it is wishful thinking. Any closing comments? Go right ahead.
I just want to commend you all on the great job that you all are doing every week with bringing these issues to the forefront. I ask the people of Trinidad and Tobago to stay woke with respect to these issues. Our democracy is under threat. They are trying to hijack our democracy by undermining our Constitution. And we in the United National Congress will stand in the gap for the people and ensure that this PNN does not trample upon our independent institutions and our democracy. I can give that assurance tonight.
Thank you so much, Mr. Saddam Hosein. Thank you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and